So let us start with your introduction and your profile.
Sure. Okay, so hi, I'm Protiti Sengupta, and I belong from a suburban town in the North 24 Parganas district of West Bengal. So I did my engineering from Heritage Institute of Technology, Kolkata, where I studied chemical engineering. And prior to that, my 10th and 12th scores were around 90.83% in 10th and 94.8 in 12th. And when it came to my college, I scored a 7.71 CGPA. After completing my graduation, I switched to the IT industry, where I worked for nearly 3.5 years. So for the first 2 years, I worked in TCS, and it was an application support role in the production environment for an investment bank client. And after that, I joined HSBC Software Development India, which was again a support role, but this time it was for a development environment. And this is basically my work so far. And apart from that, I appeared for CAT twice so far. So the first attempt was in 2021, but it did not go that well. So I again reappeared last year in 2022, and I took coaching from Edits Grid for the same. So that is about my profile. Yeah.
Okay. So when did you start preparing for last year, like CAT 22?
So I basically started in June, and I joined the third batch of Edits Grid. And basically, I had been preparing by myself back in 2021. I had not taken up any coaching. And in 2022, I heard from a friend about Edits Grid, and he was all praise about it. So I thought, okay, why not give it a shot? And I joined the third batch. And yeah, it was definitely very helpful.
Okay. So what happened when you joined the third batch in the initial few months? What were you doing?
Okay, so basically I was juggling both my work life and preparation. So initially it was a bit hectic for me, to be honest. And but the most helpful bit was that Edits Grid had their classes after 10 p.m. So initially, like on the weekdays, what would happen is I would work and my work would get over at 7. And then I could have some time for self-study. And then from 10 p.m. onwards, I would attend the classes. And there would also be like the weekend classes would go on for lengthy hours. So initially, I think it took me some time to adjust to these classes. But the consistency with which the faculty members taught us, I think that itself inspired me to give my 100%. And so that is what happened in the initial few months. And after a couple of months, we started with the mock tests. I think I started my mock tests in around July end. That is when I started my mocks. And yeah, that was also something that were discussed in classes. Like the faculty members were regularly discussing the mock tests. And that definitely helped me to formulate my strategies.
Okay. So we talk about your preparation for CAT. There are 3 subjects, and yeah. Can you point out which one was your strength in, strength in core, and which one was your weak section?
Okay, so my strongest was always verbal. Like even when I sat in 2021, the verbal was the part where I scored the most. So I knew that that section was something I would not need to worry much about. The part that I was most worried about was LRDI, because it's such an unpredictable section, and even in quants, you have a very set syllabus. And since I'm from an engineering background, I have a fair amount of, knowledge in maths. But when it comes to LRDI, it's like a puzzle that you have to solve in a very pressurized situation. So I think I was very scared of LRDI, but definitely Gaurav sir helped me to kind of get out of that zone and be confident about puzzles, because the number of puzzles that the faculty members helped us solve, I think that itself improved my confidence. In fact, in 2022, when I sat for my CAT exam, I was in slot 3, which was kind of infamous for its very difficult LRDI set. And the only reason I could get through and actually get a 99 plus in LRDI as well is simply because I practiced so much, and it developed my confidence where I could identify which set is easy and which set is tough, and I can accordingly attempt during the exam. Yeah.
Okay. So going forward, how did you prepare for VARC, since it was a strong section for you?
So for VARC, I think the best part is you don't really have a syllabus as such for VARC. You don't need to study anything. You just need to practice. So what I essentially did is I took as many sectionals, as many mock tests, and also the assignments given by Shahzad sir. So I ensured that I'm doing those consistently, and I'm analyzing each and every question that I'm attempting. So where I used to fumble a bit were the para jumbles. That used to be somewhat my weak point. I was okay with comprehension, but I was not okay much with verbal ability. So I tried to, improve on that. I tried to see that where am I making the mistakes, and also the analysis of each and every question after I'm done with the mock test. So that definitely helped, as well as the classes that were there in EG. Those also helped. Yeah.
Okay. So talking about the mocks, how many mocks you must have given, in your preparation?
Okay, so you're asking about my strategies for the mock tests, or in general, just the experience?
I mean, how many mocks did you give, and then eventually your strategy as well?
Okay, I don't remember the exact count, I'm sorry. But what I do remember is that I took mocks from 3 different places. One is IIMS, one is CL, and one is, of course, the EG mocks. So this was suggested by Hani sir himself that, diversify the mock tests that you're taking. So more than focusing on the number of mock tests, I think what I was focusing on is that even if I take one mock test in 1 week, I should analyze it completely. Like VARC, LRTI, quad, I should analyze it completely. Where did I go wrong, and where did my confidence, decrease, or where did I get stressed out? So I think apart from actually improving my knowledge, it was also somewhat analyzing how I'm, handling the stress of an exam. I think that was a big aspect of a competitive exam like CAT, because what often happens is a student has the knowledge, but he or she freaks out during the exam. And that is essentially what happened with me back in 2021. I had become very nervous during the exam, and that hampered my performance. So this time I was really bent on, handling my stress very well. And that is something I gradually improved the more mock tests that I took. And definitely, I think for mock tests, a lot of students make the mistake of focusing on more and more mock tests. So it's not about the quantity of mock tests that you're taking. It's more about how well you're analyzing it, how well you're aware of your strong and weak points, and how you can leverage that.
Okay. And if we talk about the last few days before CAT, what was your preparation style, and what kind of help did you get from EG?
So I think the best part about EG, what they did, in fact, not just a few days, a week before CAT, is that they started with revision. And the revision part is so important because we studied so much from June till November that it's very easy to forget half of the things, especially when it comes to quant. So remember that a few days before my CAT exam, I was really not studying much. What I was doing was I was attending these sessions and I was just listening to Hani sir, revise all the concepts, all the formulas. And I was kind of reiterating them in my mind. So I think that was very important, that revision strategy. I think every student should do that before their exam. And honestly, like the day before the exam, I did not study at all because I wanted to be in a very relaxed state of mind. I did not take much pressure. I relaxed. I got enough sleep. I got enough food. So these things might not seem important at first, but honestly, it is a big deal because when you're at an exam, if you're sleep deprived, if you're hungry, you won't be able to do well. So the day before it, just relax a bit. You have studied enough for so many months. It's better to relax just the day before the exam.
Okay. And what happened on the day, on the day of the exam? Because, the strategy also changed.
Yes.
So what did you formulate at the time of the exam? What did you opt for?
So I think, first of all, strategies differ from person to person. And for me, the main strategy was to actually see each section as a separate exam. Like instead of thinking that, if my VRC goes bad, I would not let it ruin the rest of my sections. Because in my slot, what happened is since LRTI was so tough, a part of me was a bit stressed out that I was not very happy with my performance in LRTI. I thought I could have done better. So I did not let that, carry on to my quant section so much. Like I hit a reset button and then I went into quants. And I tried to see it in a very fresh perspective. Like if VRC is over, it's over. I won't be thinking about it. If LRTI is over, it's over. I'll think about quant. So that was my main strategy, I would say. Another thing very important is not to get stuck on any one question. Because that often happens that, you become stubborn. You think that, why can't I solve it so many times? To not fall in that trap. That's a terrible trap. And a lot of people fall in that. But this time I was so stubborn about this that I will not fall in such a trap. And I will move on to the next question, even if I can't handle it. Because there was one question which I could remember. I've done it in an assignment. But during the D-Day, I could not remember it. But, I did not, feel offended by it. I moved on to the next question. So I think that's the strategy that I followed.
Okay. And talking about your score, how much did you score in CAT and, your percentile cumulatively and individually?
So my total percentile was 99.43. And as for the sectionals, in both VARC and LRDI, it was above 99. And for quant, it was 92.30.
Okay, great. So after that, did you also think that you want to give any other OMETs, or this was it for you?
So I think the best part about EG is that they really push students to, sit for almost any and every exam that is there. So from the very start, I was determined that I'll sit for every exam that is out there and I will do my best for each of them. I did not just think about CAT. I was already thinking about all the other exams. So the other exams that I sat for were SNAP, ZAT, IIFT. So these were the major exams that I sat for after CAT. And I think the best part was that, Hani sir, right after our CAT exam was over, he constantly told us that don't think about our exam anymore. Move on to the next one. So on the day I came back home, I took some rest. But from the next day onwards, I started with my SNAP mocks. I started with my IIFT mocks. So, keeping that momentum up, that really helped me to perform decently enough in the other management exams as well. Like, for example, I sat for ZAT where I scored around 97.03 and I got the convert for both BM and HRM. So it really helped me to, stay motivated and stay with that momentum for the rest of the exams. Because what often happens is whether you've done well or poorly in CAT, you kind of like let that stay with you and you forget about the rest of the exams. So that is something I would definitely advise is keep that momentum up for each and every exam you have appeared for. And as well as for SNAP, I got around 98.7. So these were my two main exams after CAT. And IIFT also I got around 96. It dropped a little, but I was happy that I could at least give a decent attempt for all the exams instead of focusing on just one. So yeah.
Okay. So since you mentioned that, you scored really well in all the other exams, did you also have a different kind of strategy prepared for those exams, or was it done and dusted in the preparation of CAT itself?
So as for the syllabus, it's similar because in that SNAP, it's not like they have something out of the blue or anything that is not there in CAT. What really differs, of course, is the strategy, because in CAT, it is something where it's a bit of a longer exam and you have to stay calm. As for SNAP, it was more about, it's a speed-based test. So it's less about, how much stress you're able to handle. It's more about how fast can you solve the questions. So it was a different kind of strategy. So when I was sitting for my SNAP mocks, I was focusing more on how fast am I able to solve any one question. As opposed to, I was not really so much focused on the speed. I was focusing more on accuracy. So difference. Then when it came to ZAT, there was an additional section of decision making, which again, it does not have any syllabus. You just need to practice a lot. So I had additional practice for that because decision making is a very like a subjective section, and it's a section that I again was a bit scared of. But fortunately, like the faculty members at EG were also very helpful in discussing about the different DM questions, and I was able to do fairly well enough in that section as well. Coming to the current affairs part, because that is there in IIFT as well as in ZAT. So there also we got enough guidance from EG, and apart from that, I was also reading the newspapers regularly. So I think those things helped me to score well in the current affairs section as well. And yeah, these were the basic things.
So basing on all these exams that you gave, what were the calls that you received?
So I received calls based on CAT. I received calls from all the IIMs. I received calls from FMS as well. And other than that, from SNAP, I received calls from SIBM Pune, CMHRD. From ZAT, I received calls from XLRI. Then there was also MDI Gurgaon, IMT Ghaziabad. I basically filled the forms for multiple colleges and also for MICA. So I also got a call from MICA. So these were basic interview calls, also IIFT. So yeah, basically more or less all the colleges. I think the only college from which I did not get a call was SP Jain. Other than that, I got calls from all the colleges. Yeah.
Okay. And out of these colleges, how many have you converted till then?
So currently my best convert is IIM Calcutta, which I'll be joining in June. Other than that, I also converted FMS Delhi. I also converted XLRI, BM, and as well as HRM. And I also converted MICA, MDI, and SIBM Pune.
Okay. So when you were preparing for your interviews as well, what kind of help did you take?
Right. So I took the preparations from EG as well. Like EG had a separate, preparation for the interviews. And I think the best part of this was that they created separate groups for every college and they added seniors from those colleges, which was a huge help because we could get very personalized, advice from these seniors. Because the interviews, vary for different colleges. No college has a very similar interview to the other. So it's very important to get that kind of guidance, which is very customized to each college. So that was definitely a big help. I took mock interviews and those were also very, very helpful because ultimately, even if you do have the knowledge, it's important to get in that interview setting and while you're handling that kind of situation. If the other person is pressurizing you or putting you on a spot, how well are you able to handle it? Because for most of my interviews, there were situations where there was a lot of, pressure in the interview room. There was a lot of questions which I was not able to answer. So how well am I able to handle that situation and keep a smile on my face and just go through the interview? So for that, the mocks were very important. Apart from the mocks, like EG also helped us with different materials like basic domain knowledge for, say, marketing, HR, finance, like very basic fundamental knowledge that we should gain before an MBA. Apart from that, there was also different notes for, say, graduation level subjects. Like I got notes for chemical engineering as well. So these things were very helpful because, since you're out of touch with academics, especially if you have VARC, it's very difficult to suddenly go back to academics like that. Yeah. That kind of guidance was very important at that time. And it helped me to stay confident for the interviews.
Okay, so going forward, I'd like to know your experience for each of these exams, each of these colleges that you've converted.
Sure. So do you want to know my exam experience or the interview experience?
The interview experience, yeah.
The interview experience. Okay. So I'll start with the IIM Calcutta interview because that is the one that I'll be joining. So I think this interview was possibly the most unique interview I had in this entire season. And it was a very, not very short, but kind of on the short end. So I was the last on my panel. And the people before me in my panel were looking very serious, and I thought that the panelists will be very, tough on you. So I kind of went in with that mentality. I thought that, they'll be asking me a lot of tough questions. But the panelists were actually very friendly. And the funny part is there was no icebreaker. Like there was no tell me about yourself, why MBA, nothing like that. They straight up asked me to sing a song because music is one of my hobbies in my CV. So before I could even sit, they just asked me to sing a song. And that might sound very simple here, but during an interview situation, it can kind of tense that what song should I sing and all that. But fortunately, I had a song in mind and I sang it for them. And it was very nice after that. Like we spoke about mostly extracurriculars. We talked about books. We talked about music. We also discussed that among the ABC colleges, which one would I prefer and why? Like it was a very honest discussion. I was very genuine and I was not, sugarcoating anything. I spoke absolutely honestly. And I think they really appreciated that bit. And there was also some, unique questions. Like I remember there was one question about what public transport would I choose while traveling from my home to Joka. So basically my home is around 50 to 60 kilometers from Joka. So the question was very unique because they were looking for what criteria will I think of when I choose a particular public transport. So these were kind of really unique questions, but I was able to stay calm and I was able to answer each and every one of them. And it was a fairly short interview, I would say. And more or less it was smooth, nothing much, no grilling or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So that was an experience. Apart from that, my FMS experience was also pretty interesting. Like we had an extempore at first. And my extempore was, I think, should organizations have managers or entrepreneurs? This was the topic. After that, the interview started. So a lot of the interview actually was based on my extempore as well. And then we moved on to discussing about AI, about ChatGPT and, the implications of that on the business world. So we had a very nice discussion on that. After that, there was actually a very random question in the interview. So we talked about there's a certain project in the Nicobar Islands, which is the government is really pushing for that project to develop some roads there, to develop some places there for the tourists. So that was a kind of a random question because it is not so much in the headlines. It's a bit of a side news, but just started with that. And he went really in depth into the topic. But fortunately, since I have been reading the news pretty regularly, I was aware of the news, very fortunately so. And I was able to answer it to some extent. I tried my best to, talk about the implications of such a project in the Nicobar Islands. So we had like half of the interview was, I think, about this particular news only. Mm-hmm. And the, why MBA and some of the generic questions that are there, the introduction of myself, that why exactly do I want to go to an MBA after whatever I've done in my career. So these are the questions that were there in FMS. Then coming to XLRI, I think the BM and HRM interviews, both of them were a bit of a pressurizing interviews. I honestly was not expecting I'll be able to convert it because I thought that, I had gotten nervous, but probably I was able to stay calm because I did convert both of them. For HRM, like the interesting bit was they were, grilling on a lot of random current affairs topics. Like it was more like they were old news as well. It was not just the current headlines. For example, they asked me about the Central Vista project, which was actually a news from last year, not really this year. So that was very interesting. They were trying to actually gauge how much I know about the current affairs, not just the latest. So they were trying to put me a bit on the spot about that, but I tried to stay calm and, answer all of those. We also discussed about certain, HR policies of my company, especially for the HRM interview. A lot of the interview was about the HR policies at both my organizations. Any policy that I think should be changed, any women-centric policies. So a lot of unique questions were there. For BM, in fact, I also got a question where they asked me to analyze both my organizations as an employee and as an investor. So that was a very interesting question. And in fact, in the BM interview, that was the first question I had. So there was no icebreaker. Straight up asked me that to analyze both my organizations. So I think it's important to, keep a cool mind through all of that. Because it's a very random question. Like you can't really predict what questions will be asked of you. And that is something that XLRI is known for. They are known for such unique interviews and asking very random questions. And coming to my SIBM Pune interview, I think that was also a very interesting one because it was less about why MBA or less about my academics. It was more about some personality related questions. I remember one very interesting question I had since I'm from chemical engineering. One of the questions was, which element in the periodic table do I relate myself to and why? So that was a very unique question and I had to think on the spot. So I think something that a lot of B-school interviews really judge is how well you're able to think on your feet. It's not possible before you sit for an interview, right? So it's important to have that kind of spontaneity and answer any question that is thrown to you. So that was from my SIBM Pune experience. Coming to my MICA experience, I think that was the most interesting experience so far for me because they had a very unique group exercise thing. where they kind of made us collaborate with each other. It was very different from a group discussion where you're trying to, talk over one another, you're trying to interrupt one another. So group exercise was more like a very collaborative exercise where we actually produced something for the panelists. And the interview was also very interesting. They wanted to know more about me as a person and my motivations for MBA, as well as they even asked me very straightforward questions like, how important is money to me? Because MICA has relatively lesser average packages. So those were really, on your face, very blunt questions. And tried my best to answer them honestly. I was not very diplomatic about it. And I think that is another thing that a lot of interviewers look for is how honest are you or how genuine are you in your answers, that you're not really sugarcoating or you're not pretending to be someone else. So it's very stay genuine in your answers. So these were more or less my interview experiences. Yeah.
Very beautifully and very in a descriptive manner, you have explained your journey for interviews as well. And thank you so much. But lastly, if I ask you for one piece of advice you would like to give aspirants, what is it going to be?
Okay. So my main piece of advice would be to actually analyze your strengths and weaknesses. That is something very important. So before you jump into the preparation, actually see your background, because each student has unique backgrounds. It does not match for anyone. So actually understand where your strengths lie and improve on those, and understand where your weaknesses are, and focus a lot more energy on that. So that is something very important. And another small piece is to have a very balanced life, because not to stress out too much about an exam. Because even for me, even though I was preparing apart from work, I also spent enough time on relaxation. I spent enough time on, pursuing my hobbies in general. So also do that. Have a very balanced approach. And don't, get too tensed about the exams. So ultimately, it's a stress test. So you need to keep that in mind. So that's my
yeah. Yes. And, what is EG support been like in your journey? What are you going to say about it?
So EG has actually been such a blessing, because honestly, I did not imagine I'll be scoring this well, because back in 2021, I scored really poorly, and it actually took a hit on my confidence. And starting from June, the classes that were there, the constant motivation that each of the faculty members provided, it was a big help for me. I did not imagine that I'll be getting calls from all the IIMs, and let alone scoring 99 plus in CAT. I think all of these have been possible because of the constant guidance from the faculty members. And I don't just mean in terms of assignments or in terms of lectures. Even in general, Hani sir would give a lot of motivational advice to the students, and it would help us to feel very calm and, stay motivated throughout. I think that was a very big help from EG that I received, and I'm absolutely grateful for that. And another very important thing is that they did not stop guiding us right after CAT. They continued that guidance, and still now we are in touch. We often, inform them about our results, and that's the kind of bonding that we have with the faculty members at EG. So that is something very unique to this institute, and it definitely has been helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for taking out your time, and we wish you all the very best for future.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. Nice talking to you.
Nice. Bye. Yeah.
Bye.